Born the 11th of December 1933 to proud parents Ruby and William Morgan. Jean and her younger sister Barbara attended Dunban School and had a happy childhood. Leaving to go to Sketty Business College, Jean excelled at shorthand, typing and bookkeeping, staying until she was 15 when she had her first job. She worked in the office of Llewellyn's for a few years before joining metal traders on the Strand in Swansea, where she met a young girl named Dell, quickly becoming good friends. From there to a completely different office in a fashion shop. One of Jean's happiest places was on Tor Bay, where she spent many a summer with her friends and family. One of Jean's passions was recitals, and she performed on many a stage, including Madame Patty's Pavilion in Craigenors. She regularly attended competitions and was awarded medals from the London Academy of Music and Drama. Jean met her future husband, Vivian Parkyn, when she and a friend were queuing for tickets up in the Gods, the highest part of the theatre. They were in front of Vivian and his best friend Gordon Rees of Croyce Farm. As the doors opened, the crowd surged forward, pushing Jean and her friend against the wall, but they were gallantly saved by the two gentlemen. From there, their relationship blossomed, and at the age of 23, they married. In 1958, Jean gave birth to their only child, John, and she enjoyed taking her baby on long walks and to visit the family. As John grew older, they would go to local parks, but Jean had to have eyes in the back of her head, as John was always up to mischief. Always a stylish lady, Jean loved to make most of her own clothes. Her mother and grandmother were proficient seamstresses and passed their love of design on to Jean. This was another discovery for us. Jean and Viv loved ballroom dancing and entering competitions. However, we didn't know they'd been awarded medals for their Latin American ballroom. Jean loved holidays and travelling abroad. Here she is accompanying John on his first holiday to Spain after his friends had backed out. She was terrified of horses, but because John had gone to a fiesta night with her, she agreed to try horse trekking. In the early 1980s, Jean and Viv were treated to a holiday in Bermuda by Hazel and Cecil Littlejohns, always referred to as Mr. Littlejohns, as a reward for long service given to his company. This was Viv's first foreign holiday, but thereafter he and Jean travelled quite far and wide. There are dozens of films of them enjoying themselves in places like Malta, Egypt and Jerusalem, where Jean placed a note in the Wailing Wall. In later years there were trips away in the UK with the senior citizens. They certainly lived life to the full. Jean became a member of Klein Golf Club after persuasion from her sister-in-law. It made a lot of sense as Viv and most of his family were members and spent most of their leisure time there too. Jean and Viv joined the mixed foursomes and played on courses near and far. The furthest they played was whilst on their Bermuda holiday and also in Florida, where they travelled and played with other members of the club. Needless to say, they won lots of competitions over the years, and the name Parkyn adorns the walls of the club. I should also mention that Jean has a framed certificate for a hole-in-one hanging proudly in the living room. Many friendships were made there that have stood the test of time, with Jean still enjoying a regular ladies' lunch at the club, though sadly their numbers declined these past few years. I'd like to mention Claire. Claire, Mum adored you. She said you were the baby of the group, and we thank you so much for continuing to support Mum. Another one of Jean's passions was gardening. Everyone admired the riot of colour that would burst forth from spring onwards. Jean would grow everything from seed in the greenhouses, nurturing every plant. She loved going to flower shows and admired all the displays. There were always entries for the local Dunban flower show, and Jean regularly won prizes for her entries. Every year the grandchildren would get to grow sunflowers and compare heights as they grew. There were even experiments with square tomatoes. The most important thing in life to Jean was her family. She adored her grandchildren, great-grandchildren and great-great-granddaughter. Loved them all without fault. There have been so many family parties and celebrations, all photographed of course. It has been difficult to choose which ones to use, so here are just a few. As you can imagine, with nearly 50 years of grandparenting under her belt, you knew who you could turn to for help and advice. Jean absolutely loved Christmas and would spend hours cooking and baking in the kitchen, only passing the baton on to me in the past 5 years or so. In 2015, Jean and Viv came to stay with us in Spain and decided they too would like to live in sunnier climes. However, in 2016 we noticed a decline in Vivian's health, so plans were cancelled. We lost Viv to vascular dementia in 2021 after he'd been in Havanacoid for 3 years. Jean was bereft. It was our time to look after Mum. Short walks were now the order of the day, and she looked forward to our visit, especially from little Olivia. When walking became too much, we turned to power-operated means. Mum loved how far she could go, much faster than us. She also loved to lunch out, although she had a tiny appetite. Mum suffered a fall at the beginning of August, which required her to have a hip operation, which was successful. However, it was discovered that Mum was gravely ill and had little time left with us. She went to Glasfryn House in Cocket, where she had the most attentive care possible. There are some truly special people in this world. Lombe, Estelle and Rebecca, we can't thank you enough. The poignancy of this letter lies in that we had never seen it before until the morning before Mum passed away. She would have read this the day before her wedding to Viv, and it was apt that I read it out to her on her final morning. Dear Jean, I am daydreaming. It is about your wedding, and I'm tracing back the years of your life, the budding and the blooming, the perfume and the flowering. And tomorrow you're to be young Parkyn's wife. You have written down Jean Morgan for your lover and your friends, and the quality you gave those years, such beauty never ends. So tomorrow, with a smile, you will write another name. Heaven is willing, so take our blessings for the years that are to be. For your lover Vivian Parkyn bears a name that all can trust in, and the future of your happiness is sure. So step out tomorrow morning with your arm on Vivian's, leaving for a life of joy that is waiting, for a life that is unending and is pure.